everybody in chiropractic is obsessed with the numbers they started seeing. I wish people would be more obsessed with the office visit average. In addition to that, I mean, following it as a business, but just for the sake of argument, what kind of number of patients were you seeing when you started there? I mean, we know it started from basically nothing at the second practice, but when you took on that practice that you associated in as your own, where were you at with that practice?
Sure. My bar, when I came into the associate's practice, he was like a 70 visits a day type of person. My goal was like 50 a day.
Mm-hmm.
And for years and years and years, pretty average, I'd hover at like 40, 50 a day. And that's at 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, half a day Tuesday, off on Thursday, half a day Saturday. So I'd see, that type of number per week. I mean, per day, per week, 150 to 170.
Gotcha. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you weren't really trying to grow that practice as much. You were trying to manage it, right?
Yeah. Well, the associate practice I was trying to grow because he was full on his days. I wanted to be full on my days. So as I started to flourish in his practice, his numbers were starting to go down, which any associate will find. That's part of that moving in. There's that dilution,
Right.
and overall the practice was fine. It would carry us, but he wanted to go concentrate at his brothers. So that's how that would look. Now, my brand new practice, we didn't get any type of carryover from, the existing practice. So the new practice I started was literally from scratch.
Sure.
So that entails all of the, going out there and talking to the PCPs, looking for referrals, getting your name out there, all of that, mining for patient visits type of thing. So that's how those two rolled out.
Now, let me stop you there because that's where a lot of people find themselves, and that's where they often get frustrated or in trouble, which is starting that practice from scratch. So we're not in the digital age. We're not doing social media. We're not doing any of that other stuff. Let's say you had to pick the top 3 things that brought patients into the door. What would those be?
Well, number one was grand rounds. And so I would take a presentation and I'd put it together and I would just go talk to the residents at the local hospitals.
Okay.
Why? Because at that time, and still it's very true today, PCPs don't know what you're doing. They don't know what to expect because we have such a high variation in the profession. One clinician does this, another clinician does that. Again, it goes to our entrepreneurial spirit. And another one is they really want to be able to predict what you're doing with their patient, and they want their patient back. So if you can satisfy those things, I'm not treating diabetes, I'm not treating cardiovascular, I'm not treating broken bones, I'm doing this with your patient, and give them a predictability part of it based on evidence. I'm going back to that school thing, what works and what doesn't. I started to get the referrals from them, and a lot of referrals through years and years and years. So that was probably one of the best things I could do for my office. I would still do that again today. I was still doing it when I was in private practice leaving there. So that would be number one, Vinny.
Now, when you say you put together a presentation for them, you mean what was the presentation on?
Well, it was on, I was trying to bridge the language. We speak such different language. Like if I say CA, at that time we're thinking chiropractic assistant. When I say CA to my PCP, when I was out courting them at lunch, they're thinking cancer. And when I say CA to a patient, they're thinking California. And it goes on and on and on. In the same way with, think of joints. If you say instability, if you say that to our colleagues, it means one thing. If you say it to a PT, it means another. Say it to a surgeon, you're going to get a cage, a surgical cage. So the Tower of Babel is alive and well. And the very first thing in my presentations, even, 40 years ago, was to speak a common language, talk to your audience on things that they already understand, and then slowly bring them to what I'm doing in practice. And all of a sudden, these docs, who are, by the way, um, primary care, there's internal medicine, family practice, but those are your main groups.
Mhm.
1/5 of their practice coming in is musculoskeletal, and they don't know how to treat it, but they're not going to refer them to somebody who they don't understand.
Right.
Here's what they would do, Vinny. They would go, oh, say I'm a Dr. Smith, a PCP, and somebody comes in and hurts their back. They would, it's a boo-boo back. You can take care of it in, 6 visits, for crying out loud. But they would say, okay, Mrs. Jones, I want you to see, Dr. X. He's the best neurosurgeon in Michigan. You never get referred to the second best, but that was their MO, with everything. And that's why you're not seeing those patients. When they can have somebody who's right next door and release that burden, and it's predictable, high patient satisfaction. Everybody knows Cairo gets the highest satisfaction out there, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's use your language, it's a win-win-win. You, the patient, and the PCP. So that presentation I put on, common language, show them what you're doing, give them some data on what works and what doesn't, what you're doing in your office, and let them know that you're going to play ball. You're not going to take their patient and say, don't go in for your diabetes treatment or cardiovascular. Work with them, collaborate with them. And you can, push back behind the scenes, but not in front of a patient.
Right.
That's kind of how that rolled out.
So in what context did you give them that presentation? I mean, it wasn't
I gotcha.
at grand rounds while they were seeing patients, as you just said. So how did you deliver that information?
Yeah, hospital grand rounds is when you bring in people and you give them like a lecture in a lecture hall.
Okay,
yeah,
interesting. Gotcha. I did.
And so, yeah, they would bring in like either academic hospital personnel or residents, just like when we did our residency. They'll bring them through, and they'll say, okay, go to this lecture, go to that lecture. Some of it is, from their viewpoint, some of it is mandatory, some of it is they just go out of interest. So the way to do it is you go literally to a hospital and you say, I would like to present grand rounds. And, you talk to the hospital HR, hospital administration, and they'll say, okay, you'll want to talk to, X, Y, and Z. He or she sets up these discussions. What groups would you like to do that in front of? And you want to talk in front of family practice. You want to talk in front of, the PCPs who are going to go out there and either be internists or family practice. Those are the main ones who will refer to you, not the specialists. You work with the specialists also. I've had many of them in my office, but you want to be in front of the specialists in that course of care. You're the one a patient should see first. Why? Because again, 85% of them won't make it past you. They won't need the injection. They won't need the intervention. They won't need the implants. They won't need the surgery.
Sure. Absolutely. Which cuts their risk, it eliminates their risk basically,
right?
Because that's where all the risk comes in, and they get to still look good and provide a solution, and you get to help them do that, which is great.
Yeah. And Vinny, when a system's working at high efficiency, the lingo they use now is, oh, you want these providers to work at the top of their license. In other words, you want a surgeon only seeing surgical cases, not creating surgical cases. You want them already vetted. You want other things to have failed before they ever get there. So she's working at the top of her license. And the same way with Cairo, you're not working at the top of your license. Believe me, I worked shoulder to shoulder with 17 neurosurgeons for 11 years. And I'm not at the top of my license if they've already gone through all of these low value scenarios.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's how these systems really work with high efficiency. But it all starts with getting that message out. As a young practitioner, man, develop a PowerPoint in today's language. It's simple. Use the data. We have plenty of data to show your efficacy and efficiency.
Yeah.
Go out and talk to these young doctors. And by the way, when they go out in practice, they remember you. You're playing the long game. They remember you. And they say, Dr. Justino came and gave us that talk on back pain. He's a square shooter. I know exactly what he's doing. Send him to him. And once you get that one or two, boom. Yeah, you start getting more and more and more. And your practice is sustainable that way.
Now, do you also send them reports? So are you nurturing that professional relationship through a specific report for them?
Yeah, I can't believe you just asked that, Vinny, because that's one of my absolute favorite things. A
I knew that
report,
somehow. I absolutely.
yeah, man, a report of findings it's a Trojan horse when it comes to building confidence with your PCP. And if I can real quickly, it handles so many different things. A report of findings. Here's what you do. You find out how a PCP is organized. A lot of times, he or she will be in an ACO, and that ACO has certain things that they want the PCP to satisfy. Um, and some of it might be make sure every patient you talk to, you're talking about smoking cessation. Make sure every patient you're talking to is exposed to community-based organizations. A lot of this sounds weird for new clinicians, but trust me, just follow this a bit. So what you do in your report of findings as a specialist in your area, you address those in your report of findings to that patient. No matter what that patient's experiencing, address those really common lifestyle issues, smoking cessation, community-based organizations, so on and so forth. And also, you go through and you report on that you did a 16-point, history, that you did a targeted examination of the chief complaint, what the chief complaint is, how you're treating it, and you give that report of findings to the patient. You read it to them. Everybody does a report of findings in front of their patient. There's no way your report of findings in front of that patient should be any different than what you're sending to your PCP. So when all of this is on one piece of paper, you give the report of findings to your patient. Have him or her sign it and explain to them, I'm sending this to your PCP, and it's a great way that we collaborate and we can all come together for the better of your healthcare. The patient loves it. Now, here's what happens when you send that document to the PCP, or in the alternative, and hopefully so, it's part of the EHR when you send it.
Mm-hmm.
The PCP gets it. And think now in their office, when your Dr. Smith, you get this report from some wild, awesome Cairo out there, Dr. Justino. What happens to that report when I get it as a PCP? It has to become part of the patient medical record. It has to. So now it's in their EHR with your name, and then that triggers in their software this referral source and this reporting source. So now the front desk knows who you are. Management knows who you are. Their practice management dashboard knows who you are when they're doing analytics at the end of the month. So all of that stuff, this Trojan horse I mentioned, is good for your practice management. And the clinician now, the PCP, knows that you're not reduplicating services. You didn't retake x-rays. You didn't send them out for another MRI. You didn't take them off their medication. That's big. If you feel bad about a medication, talk to the PCP. Don't strip the patient of it right there. And it happens, right? You want to take somebody off a statin because they have a cramp in their shoulder blade that's been there for 6 months. Anyways, right on down the list. But all that report of findings Vinny does is build a wonderful, wonderful collaboration with you and that PCP and the group that she belongs to.
Wow, that's great, because I'm big on relationships. So everywhere I've come from, and relationships, they're a win-win thing, because you enjoy them, they enjoy them. Plus, people trust who they have a relationship with. So it behooves you to build in that relationship and add to that bank account. And this does that beautifully. And honestly, too few chiropractors talk about this, because they immediately want to make the medical doctor the enemy, but they have a job to do. They come from a school of thought, and everybody is required to best handle the patient and all of their concerns. We're all here for the same reason. And so to build a relationship with them, this is a great tool to doing that. And I love that. So that's really, really good. And I can see why that practice built, because this is going to be very effective.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting to share that with the young practitioners also. And it handles other things that we're not even talking about, like consent. That's actually a form of consent. When you read and the patient's signing your treatment plan, that's a form of consent. We all know consent's a moving target. It's not just this one line you fill out. So it satisfies that also. And the risk management part of it, if you're communicating with the PCP and they're not giving you any pushback, there's an implied consent on their part that this is a valid form of treatment. So yeah, it goes a long way. It really does.